and partial affections. The result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Be seated, please. Good morning, everyone. And we'll commence the sitting of the Senate Friday, September 30, 2022. And before I get into the agenda for today, we'll note the absence of Senator Campbell Rodriguez, who was sent a note indicating her absence. She was invited to be the keynote speaker by the International Republican Institute, and she's making her presentation as the main speaker today at 10 a.m. and hence will be unavoidably absent from today's sitting. We also have with us in the gallery members of the Patriots and the People's National Party YO, PNP YO, and I suspect that their presence here is in full support of Senator Morris, and that is not Floyd. Senator Gabriella Morris, who will be making her presentation in the State of the Nation debate today. Yes. So we welcome the members of those organizations who are here. And we'll have statements by ministers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm just going to express regrets to members for the delay in their receipt of the actual document for their, so that they may follow, as the document evolved a little late and had to be split into two, and the Parliament will therefore share them as soon as the copies have been made. It is my intention this morning to deliver a statement on the status of Jamaican nationals in the Republic of Cuba and in the United States following the passage of Hurricane Ian, as well as a report on Jamaica's participation in the United Nations General Assembly. That is the 77th session of the General Assembly High-Level Week. Mr. President, members would be aware of the recent...
Just on a point of order, President. May the statement be delayed, we come back to it, and then the statements are here so we could have it as is the customary thing. In other words, if we go through the rest of the agenda, we come back to this when we get to public business or thereabout. Just give time enough for the Parliament to bring the statement.
Senator Brown, I have seen, unless the minister is minded, but I have seen presentations made and the documents are presented during the process. And it will be here shortly, I'm certain. Minister.
To the point made, and I'm assured that the documents will not be long delayed. To indicate, Mr. President, that members would be aware of the recent passage of Hurricane Ian through the Caribbean and North America, and that while Jamaica was spared the worst, and we're thankful for same, Ian has left much devastation in its wake, particularly in the Republic of Cuba and in the state of Florida of the United States. Unfortunately, in Cuba, where Ian made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane, 2 Cuban lives were lost, and reports indicate that significant damage was sustained by the island's infrastructure and agricultural sector, particularly in the province of Pinar del Rio. Partial and total collapse of buildings and severe crop losses, including tobacco and banana, have been reported. As you may be aware, Mr. President, the Prime Minister has already written to his counterpart to express solidarity in the wake of this disaster and his trust in the resilience of the Cuban people to drive recovery. The government of Cuba has already responded in expression of their appreciation for these sentiments sent on behalf of the government and people of Jamaica. And of course, Ambassador Quiñones and I have spoken, and I have asked that he convey my sentiments to Minister Rodriguez. In fact, as we speak and as we know, disaster recovery is a process, and certainly in this region we always see how best we can assist in circumstances where our neighbor or neighbors indeed have challenges. Ambassador Quiñones is therefore right now, as a matter of fact, at the ministry in discussions with our team so that we can have a more formal update on the circumstances as they have unfolded to date, including the status of the government's assessment of its needs and processes. As these become more clear, we will, as we have always before, look at how best we are also able to assist our brothers and sisters there. In the United States of America, where Ian made landfall in Florida as a Category 4 hurricane, reports indicate at last count, or at last where I last heard a report, that 21 lives were lost, but it is anticipated that the toll is likely to rise. Reports are that Ian has had a devastating impact on southwestern Florida, and in particular including Sanibel, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Naples, and Sarasota, and it continues its destructive path towards the Carolinas. Mr. President, on the well-being of our nationals in particular, reports coming from the embassy in Havana and our consulate general in Miami are thus far that there are no casualties within the Jamaican community. And we really give thanks, especially as one of our students is located in the Pinar del Rio region of Cuba, which was hardest hit. But she is well, she's in good spirits, she's in contact, and we are, however, remaining vigilant in light of the accounts that we've received regarding damage to property and infrastructure, which impacts water and electricity. Our embassy in Havana continues to check on the well-being of our 28 scholarship students and approximately 50 self-financed students. Students with whom the embassy has been in touch, and these are the majority and representatives, are all in good spirits. And they, as I am sure, like members here, understand that recovery from a natural disaster is an island-wide and a steady process which requires some patience and understanding. I understand, of course, that the scholarship students who are there with the support of the Cuban government are very cognizant of this and are being responsible and patient with the process. We are encouraged by news that the government and people of Cuba are already mobilizing action for restoration and recovery, and as I have shared, we're discussing needs and assessments with Ambassador Quiñones. In Florida, our consulate has been in touch with several Jamaicans across the state, assisted by several community groups and leaders, including members of the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council. As they have explained, and as you would have heard, Mr. President, the majority of Jamaicans are generally located in counties which were not in the areas worst hit. So again, we are appreciative while being sensitive to the challenges experienced by the wider citizenry impacted. We have and will continue to reach out to all Jamaicans, in particular students, farm workers, seasonal hotel workers, and the elderly. We continue to closely monitor the well-being of our Jamaican nationals across the eastern seaboard and encourage them to continue to stay tuned to official news challenges and emergency operations and guidance on evacuation, shelters, and access to rescue and response. Finally, Mr. President, the Government of Jamaica continues to pray for the safety of everyone in the path of Ian and those who have already suffered in its path, and remains in solidarity with the governments and peoples of both Cuba and the United States during this difficult time. We also wish to extend heartfelt condolences on the loss of life in both countries, as well as a speedy recovery. Mr. President, I will just proceed with the second statement in respect of our attendance at the 77th United Nations General Assembly High-Level Week. Mr. President, I take this opportunity to inform the Senate, and sorry, let me just pause here. With your indulgence.
Mr. President, perhaps while we wait, the Minister wouldn't mind me in response to her statement.
Yeah, that's what I was going to...
the statement you made about the impact of the hurricane.
Yeah.
Just to really join in extending sympathies to the government and people of Cuba and the United States, and in particular Florida, which has so far been badly hit, although we're here. It's going for South Carolina, and to join with the government in supporting any assistance, modest though it may be, that we could extend, in particular to the people of Cuba, as they would have much less resources available than the people of the USA, and the fact that they have always come to our assistance, and indeed the assistance of the world, to the extent that they can. And so we join in extending our sympathies and condolences for the loss of life. And we urge and support the government in Jamaica extending that hand of friendship in providing whatever assistance we can, albeit from a relatively modest set of resources in the context of the international community.
Mr. President, I thank Senator Bunting for his solidarity and his kind message of support and extending the hand of friendship and assistance as well. And I think the Jamaican people can be heartened by recalling that it was not quite, it may have been just 2 weeks ago, that the HMJS Nanny took $20 million worth of medical supplies and support from Jamaica to the port of Santiago for donation to the people of the Republic of Cuba. So we had been in discussions about distribution and all of that matter, and it is really truly tragic that following so soon on a donation of that nature, which of course with our own challenges takes some doing to come by, but was given in with a full heart and a warm hand of friendship. But again, we are in discussions again about how else we can assist. So please be assured, and we will keep you updated if there are ways in which you wish to collaborate and support any initiative that's developed, then of course we would welcome that very much. Mr. President, as the document has not yet come and the UNGA document is a little longer than the Cuban one, I would ask if Senator Morris wishes to proceed, then I'd be happy to stand down and seek recommittal of statement by ministers, by which time one would hope that the document will have presented itself. And I think there is one small issue that we will take before we reach public business as well. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, ministers. Thank you, Senator Bunting. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following: the Stamp Duty Amendment of Appendix A to Schedule Order 2002 Resolution under the Stamp Duty Act. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statement of the Jamaica Bauxite Institute Limited for the year 2020 to 2021. The Government of Jamaica Interim Fiscal Policy Paper for the year 2022-2023, dated September 27th, 2022, and the Auditor General's Department Financial Statements, Analysis of Public Bodies, National Solid Waste Management Authority.
Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honorable Senate. I have the honor to advise the Honorable Senate that on the 27th day of September 2022, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Special Economic Zone Act was passed in the House of Representatives without amendment. I also have the honor to advise that a bill entitled An Act to Repeal and Replace the Firearms Act to provide more particularly for the prohibition, restriction, or regulation as may be appropriate of firearms and ammunition, and for connected matters, the Senate made to this second mentioned bill. The Senate amendments were approved by the House with a further amendment to the Senate amendments to the bill, for which the House desires the concurrence of the Honorable Senate. The amendment being the following: in the enacting clause, delete the words "the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty" and substitute therefore the words "the King's Most Excellent Majesty." Signed, Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, CDMP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I now ask for your consent for the House of Representatives amendment to a bill entitled An Act to Repeal and Replace the Firearms Act to provide more particularly for the prohibition, restriction, or regulation as may be appropriate of firearms and ammunition and for connected matters to be considered and approved.
Consent is given.
Thank you, Mr. President.
No.
Mr. President, is it consent of the President for this to be taken, if you would allow me?
Sorry.
Merciful. Mr. President, members might recall that the bill which is before us had commenced under the reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and during the period within which it was tabled at the House in the Senate and passed, the demise of the Queen took place. There was some debate regarding the provisions of the enacting clause, but it had been determined that the matter could be treated by interpretation under the Constitution. It had been determined in the lower house on the opinion of the Attorney General that out of an abundance of caution, especially given the uncharted waters and, of course, the significance of the bill to the legislative agenda, that it would be best to amend the enacting clause as has been read by the clerk. It is in this context that the consent of the Senate is sought, and it is, we therefore welcome any contributions on the matter. I thank you.
Senator Brown.
Thank you, President. I well recall that last week when we debated this bill, I made the point that this was the first bill under the new king. But then the language, as the minister pointed out, was about the Queen, Most Excellent Majesty. And I appreciate, therefore, that the amendment is really to change the Queen to the King. I hope that this change will hasten our country's steps towards being a republic, so that we don't change one foreigner for another foreigner, but we change for a president who is like us, who is from us, who is fully a Jamaican. And so, while the House feels it's not an editorial matter, it's one for which they must make the change, I certainly believe, more so since it's not editorial in their opinion, that we need to move from just doing these things. Just as we changed the oath which said we were pledge allegiance to the Queen, our heirs and successors, and we changed that to speaking about the Constitution and the people of Jamaica. I hope that soon and very soon, as we say on this side, that time come to repatriate our sovereignty, and never again with the passing of a monarch should we have to change our legislation, which we have spent time trying to approve just because foreign makes the change. Time come for Jamaica to adopt a republican status, which will avoid us having to make this change. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know all members of this House and indeed the public of Jamaica is aware that the Prime Minister has advised that a process is underway, including the appointment of a minister who is charged with responsibility for the establishment of a committee to ensure that the process is one which is in good order and appropriately done with effective consultation, all sides having agreed that this is the way forward. And in this context, as we take care of the matters directly before us today, I ask that the House amendment be approved.
Well, you have heard the question from the Minister. Those in favour? I thought I would hear a louder aye from Senator Brown. Those against? The ayes have it. All right. Petitions. Papers. Reports from committees. Notice of motions given orally. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentations of bills without leave of Senate first obtained. Public business. Sorry, Senator Morris.
Business of the day. I just want to find out, because today is the final day of September, which is observed as Senior Citizens Month, and it jumped at me that we started the debate on a motion that I had tabled on calling for legislation to protect our senior citizens. And, the debate on the resolution, the motion, has not proceeded. And I would like to find out what is the situation with that debate, if it has yes, but I have made my position known, and I mean it's over 3 months now, and we have not continued the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. So far as I recall, the debate had been suspended for consultations to take place on amendments. If it is that these have been agreed, I must admit I've not been advised, I've not been updated that agreement has been reached. So if that is the case, I know there was to be discussion with the Minister to ensure that, well, all was as it should be so that we would be able to follow through. And I'm happy to follow up with that. And if it is that all is aligned, we could take it if it is that the Senator is saying that he is ready as well. So we can follow up on that. It shouldn't be a matter for contention.
All right.
Okay.
So Senator Morris, just have the relevant dialogue and get it back on the table for conclusion. All right.
The government was supposed to come back to it.
Mr. President, as you have just announced public business, I just wish to confirm that it is our intention to continue the debate on the state of the nation, and that, as has been asserted by you earlier, we have the pleasure of inviting Senator Gabriela Morris to be our sole contributor on the debate today. And with that, we therefore invite her to take the floor.
All right, Senator Gabriela Morris.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. Mr. President, opening today's State of the Nation debate for the opposition is truly an exciting moment for me. Never did I imagine that a young girl from Doom Street, Montego Bay, would have the opportunity to stand in this place and represent the people of Jamaica. Mr. President, I've said it before, but I believe that when people take a chance on you, you should use every opportunity to acknowledge and pay your respects. And so this morning, I want to again salute former leader of the opposition, Dr. Peter David Phillips, for entrusting me with such an awesome responsibility at such a young age. I also want to pay my respects to the current leader of the opposition, Mr. Mark Golding, for his faith in me, and for granting me the opportunity to serve as spokesperson on youth and entertainment. To my colleagues in this House, on both sides, I continue to learn from each of you, and I want to thank you for your service to the nation. We know that this can be an unforgiving role, and so I lift my hat to each of you. To my colleagues on this side especially, you have provided tremendous guidance, and I am deeply appreciative of your wise counsel, your sometimes not so gentle nudging to move outside of the comfort zone. And I can say that you have each been a tower of strength on this sojourn. To the staff here in the Parliament, respect is due to each and every one of you for keeping this House in order. Mr. President, please allow me to also pay my respect to my village, to my anchor, to my support, to my friends and families. I know they're on the Zoom watching, they're live watching, and I want to say that your unending support is more than I could ever ask or hope for. Colleagues, I also want to acknowledge those who are here from the PNP-YU and from the Patriots. These young people give of themselves endlessly. Their time, their talent, and support, it means the world. I also must pay tribute to the scores of young and old persons who have shared kind words, encouragement, and advice during my time as a senator. I value you and I'm even more empowered by your support to continue to play my part in securing a brighter future for all Jamaicans. Colleagues, I want to underscore the fact that it is indeed an immense privilege for each and every one of us to sit in this chamber, fulfilling this fundamental duty of oversight and legislative responsibility to our fellow citizens in service of this great nation is truly an honor. Our people, the Jamaican people, are full of life, potential, and faith. And it is our duty, whether we're in opposition or government, to do everything that we can to advance their interest. At this point in our collective history, though, Mr. President, as a developing state, with our fair share of maladies, leaders must lead. It is not enough for the leaders of this country to deflect or to pretend the problems don't exist. And Mr. President, I say unreservedly that time come for a sober examination of the challenges Jamaica and her people currently face. Time come for pragmatic leadership that will propel Jamaica closer to Vision 2030. Vision 2030, which should see Jamaica becoming a prime destination for people to live, work, raise families, and do business. Against this backdrop, Senators, the State of the Nation provides each of us an opportunity to properly examine these issues that confound us, and also propose solutions for building our Jamaica. It is in this spirit, Mr. President, that I rise to address some of the issues that continue to affect the youth of Jamaica as well as the entertainment industry. Now, Mr. President, I'm no pollster, and my study was by no means scientific. But out of curiosity, I made a point to do a poll among some young people. And I asked this question both online and in my face-to-face engagement. The question was, are you happy with the direction Jamaica is moving in? It should concern all of us that the vast majority of respondents said no. Whether the Prime Minister wants to believe it or not, though, the tide of negativism which he has vowed to push back against is not some made-up construct for political gain. It is the reality for many Jamaicans who continue to feel excluded, who continue to feel powerless. We see it reflected in our music. The singer sings, and me alone in the dark room. And that is the sentiment being experienced by many Jamaicans, feeling alone and in the dark. The reality, colleagues, and we cannot ignore it, is that high cost of living, low wages, high crime rates, limited access to housing continue to threaten the advancement of the Jamaican people and leave them with little hope. And if we're truly to be real with ourselves, if we are truly able to look around, we will acknowledge that Jamaica, as it is not a place that is nice for everybody. But colleagues, I want us to let one simple fact sink in. We just celebrated 60 years of independence. And I believe that it is important to say that time come for the next few years to be years of action, from us if we wish to truly secure the future for the next generation. And so I want to say to the Prime Minister with the utmost respect that the focus should not be on pushing back at critics. The focus should be on pushing back against poverty by creating people-centered policies. The focus instead should be on pushing back against crime by identifying those root causes and creating serious programs and policies to counteract the challenges. I dare say the focus has to be on pushing forward, not back, with education, by building a world-class education system that truly prepares our young people to thrive. Now more than ever, colleagues, and I'm sure you will agree with me, we have to attend to these pressing challenges. Our politics might be different, but this is our Jamaica. We have to move with a sense of urgency. My generation, the generation of your children and grandchildren, it depends on us doing the right thing right now. Time come. Colleagues, last time this year, I believe, I spoke in the State of the Nation debate. And one of the things that I mentioned was the importance of advancing youth development. Jamaica's future is hinged on the youth of the nation. And I believe that our present reality is unfortunate, with many of our young people facing trying circumstances. Economic hardship, slow job creation, limited opportunity are just a few of the challenges that youth are facing. I share with you that as of April 2022, Jamaica's national unemployment rate was 6%. The unemployment rate for youth aged 14 to 24 was 15.5%. And Mr. President, we have to ask ourselves, why is it that the unemployment rate for youth doubles what it is for the national rate? Must the youth suffer twofold? Some of us might say that the pandemic is reflective on the unemployment rate, but it is not the sole reason. And it would be imprudent of us to bury our heads and blame COVID for this fallout exclusively. I dare say, though, that if the pandemic did anything, was that it exposed, uncovered the fault lines in our labor market, as the vast majority of our young people are engaged in sectors that are vulnerable to economic shocks, such as the BPO industry, the tourism industry, and the informal sector. And as it stands, colleagues, job security seems like a novelty to many young Jamaicans. As a nation, we have to do better to afford young people not just job security, but we also have to offer them economic opportunity. This morning, colleagues, I stand resolute in my vision for the Jamaican youth. A future where they no longer have to work for a twopence or live in fear of job loss, but rather a future where they are educated, empowered, and able to use their competencies and creative skills to build a better lives for themselves and build a brighter future for this country. But if we think seriously about accomplishing this feat, we can't think about reestablishing a pre-pandemic economy. We have to think about a progressive, contemporary economy that zeroes in on technology, expansion, entrepreneurship, skills training, vocational courses, and professional development of young people. Time come for us to ensure that young people are given a chance to access economic development. Mr. President, I want to highlight just 2 entities that are critical to advancing young people. The High Trust, NTA. It stands poised to assist in this effort of equipping young people. However, heart has been stuck in the Prime Minister's super ministry, and it has been neglected and has strayed from its mandate. Mr. President, when I heard the Prime Minister announce that we have to be importing skilled laborers, I said, what happened to heart? And so it brings into sharp focus the need for us to evaluate the entity, to upgrade the current structure, and ensure that it is fit for purpose. Colleagues, I also have to mention the National Youth Service, an entity that many young Jamaicans have benefited from. But in our current dispensation, the NYS needs to be revamped. It needs to be expanded to provide more employment opportunities, more internships, and more mentorship support for young people. Colleagues, I make this final suggestion. And as we seek to remedy the challenges of unemployment, the continuation of work done by the last PNP administration by building on the framework for the creation of the Jamaica Logistics Hub initiative is definitely needed at this time. Mr. President, since the government has taken office, we've seen a lag in its implementation. And this has hindered, I wish he was here, this has hindered our ability to capitalize on our strategic location, on our youthful population, and on the expertise of our students who are leaving Caribbean Maritime University and other universities with degrees in logistics and supply chain management. You know, the Prime Minister often refers to Singapore's development as a model for Jamaican development. But if we're being sincere, any at all, about becoming anywhere remotely close to Singapore, the feet dragging on these issues has to come to an end. Time come for us to move forward with initiatives that will result in employment for young people in this country. Mr. President, I want to also make mention of something that has been quite disconcerting for me. And I'll share with the House something that I saw on Twitter. The statement read, "Dear young Jamaicans, leave. You're sincerely a trying youth." Honorable Senate, this represented a continuation of the growing sense that the only future available to young people lies outside of Jamaica. Our young people are far too willing and ready to contribute to Jamaica's serious brain drain problem. To be clear, I want to say that this is an issue that we've been contending with for a long time, and clearly we haven't dealt with it. I still remember talking about this as a younger person in discussions in high school. However, still in 2022, we're at a stage where we're ranked second globally on the Human and Flight and Brain Drain Index. Now, this situation is by no means an invitation to argue over the statistics or the rise being presented in brain drain. Instead, it is more a call to focus on this serious matter and consider, perhaps, what can be done to provide more and better opportunities for young people so that they can feel that their future lies here. Mr. President, I stumbled on another quote, and I want to share it with you. The quote says, "Once you're born in Jamaica, life is automatically leading you 1-0. If you're not educated, 2-0. If you're not rich, 3-0. If you don't have links, 4-0. Mr. President, the score continues to go up until the point where this young person then indicates you're left with no option but to hustle every day in order to equalize. Members, this is the jarring reality that young people face. In addition to this, they contend with low salaries, lack of healthcare benefits, struggling with acquiring a home, education financing, crime and violence, and little opportunities for social mobility. Our government must therefore commit to putting in the work to create a fortified and solid economy. The government, it seems, has simply forgotten that a rising tide lifts all boats. Instead, it seems they have embraced big businesses and trickle-down economics, which have prevented sustainable growth and development for many young people. I therefore want to call on the government to marshal the resources available by JAMPRO, Exim Bank, Development Bank of Jamaica, and Special Economic Zone and the Special Economic Zone Authority to designate spaces and to give assistance to young people especially to start their businesses, to advance their quality of life, and therefore improve the economic situation here in Jamaica. Mr. President, I also want to raise two issues. And I have to inquire about the national policy and plan of action on international migration and development. Where's the progress with that? Where is the progress with which we are implementing aspects of the 2017-2030 National Youth Policy and reporting on its key performance indicators to see how youth understand it and what has been achieved? Time come for us also to look at these policies and see how far we've come and how much further we have to go. Colleagues, I rise at a time when it is critical that creating thriving spaces for youth needs to be an all-out national endeavor. We have to join to ensure that Jamaica becomes a place where young people feel as if they can live and live good. Colleagues, so remember, I'm somewhat of a pollster now. So I also asked young people, what are some of the other issues that who knows? What they also shared with me is that one of the things that results in the feeling that they will leave Jamaica is corruption, a lack of trust. And I couldn't stand here without mentioning the issue of corruption and the billions of tax dollars that have been mismanaged by this administration. Our young people are looking on, and we see these acts go unpunished, ministry after ministry, board after board, time and time again. We see millions being allocated for gratuitous projects while we're left to fend for ourselves and find solutions, which may not always be ideal. And it appears, colleagues, that this government does not have its priorities right. I'm not making this up. This is what young people are saying. Again, I do not claim to be a scientific pollster, but I'm listening and on the pulse. And we would be blind to not see that the behavior by public officials is one of the contributing factors that contribute to the growing disinterest that youth have in Jamaica. Young people are looking for transparency. They're looking for accountability from those who have been elected to serve them. Colleagues, as I speak on issues facing the youth, I must mention a pressing issue which was a source of discontent in many of our schools recently. At the start of the school year, there are always contentions and reports of students being sent home or locked outside school premises because of hairstyles or dress code violations. But quite shockingly, the last thing that I think anyone expected in response to this issue was the adding of fuel to the fire by Minister of Education, who comments that a particular dress requirement will discourage sexual predators. It is disheartening. It is disheartening to see that in 2022, there are those in our national leadership who still espouse the ridiculously antiquated view that a woman's clothing has anything to do with her likelihood of getting harassed or assaulted.
Sorry. Sorry, Minister.
Sorry, the Minister.
Sorry.
No, the Minister did not say that.
I was just asking her, Senator Morris, to sit.
What was said.
To sit.
It is that she's misleading the House. Misleading the House. That is the point of order.
The point of order
is that she's misleading the House.
You don't even know what was said.
The Minister said that she supported discipline. She was on the side of discipline, not that she believed that point.
It is not a point of order. There is no point of order here.
It is what the newspapers carried, and that is not what she said. So you cannot quote that. You cannot quote an incorrect assertion. She's misleading the Senate. The point is that the minister stood on the side of discipline. I know that the issue is complex, but what the senator has just said is not what the minister said, and therefore should be withdrawn. Thank you.
Hello. Senator Morris, members, quiet down. The next thing I'm going to do is to stand. All right. You know that I did not hear through all that rabble what was being said by either side. So I'm going to ask the minister if she has stood saying that she wishes to raise a point of order, and that for me to rule whether it is or is not, I will have to hear what is said. So, Minister, could you please, in quiet, state what your point of order is, and for me to make a ruling on it. Thank you. Senator Morris, just let me hear what
Mr. President, the Senator is misleading the House by stating that the minister said that she believed that the dress will affect the sexual predators, the activity of sexual predators in schools. What the minister said was that she stood on the side of discipline and a process to change the rules where it is that stakeholders believed that they should be changed. That is what was said, Mr. President, and therefore, if the statement by Senator Morris is allowed to stand, it will have misled the House and incorrectly stand in Hansard.
Thank you very much. Continue, Senator Morris, please.
Thank you.
It can be clarified. Continue, Senator Morris.
Continue, Senator.
No.
No.
That is her interpretation of what was said. So I will allow her to continue. At the appropriate time.
Mr. President, on a point of order.
Senator Brown.
I'm raising on a point of order.
At an appropriate time, the response will be made to that. Continue, Senator Morris, please.
Continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Furthermore, the views expressed on this matter is a representation of the continued laid-back and half-baked approach that is taken to issues in the education sector, year after year after year. Mr. President, I'm calling on the minister to clarify what the position is and what are with respect to grooming, so as to have no more students being locked out and in loss.
That's right.
Colleagues, I'm sure that we can all agree, despite our differences, regarding the statement, that the challenges in our education system need to be remedied now.
Yes.
Time come for the Ministry of Education to be pragmatic and decisive.
Yes.
The uniform battle needs to end.
Yes.
And more emphasis needs to be placed instead on creating a fit-for-purpose education system that strives to prepare our students to thrive. Our focus needs to be on stemming the tide of violence in our schools. We saw what happened yesterday at Kingston Technical. Unfortunate, but we need to act now. We need to focus our efforts on ensuring proper nutrition for students in schools. We need to focus our efforts on equipping schools with the resources to provide quality education. And finally, Mr. President, I don't want this to get lost in the conversation, but we need to focus on ensuring that our education system caters to all students. Students with disabilities cannot be left out of the equation. Colleagues, I also want to speak on leveraging.
Speaker's time for speaking has expired.
Mr. President? Yep. Go. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Speaker's time having expired, if she may be permitted to sufficient time to complete her presentation.
My question is that the Speaker's time be extended sufficiently for her to complete her presentation. All in favor? Those against? Continue, Senator Mark.
Thank you. Mr. President. President, over the years, our tourism and entertainment industry has benefited greatly from the talents and vibrancy of the Jamaican people. As we aim to build our Jamaican dream, we must allow Jamaicans to play a more central role in enriching our tourism and entertainment industry. We must give them more support so that they can hone and develop their talents and provide an environment that nurtures these talents. The Chase Entertainment Industry Support Initiative should be lauded for providing much-needed assistance to entertainment practitioners after the pandemic temporarily stunned the growth of the industry. However, there's still more room for improvement and expansion of the sector. Under the leadership of former Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Portia Simpson Miller, the Entertainment Advisory Board was established, as well as the National Cultural and Creative Industries Commission, which led to focused plans for the sector. An entertainment registry was also created, and this was pivotal to engaging practitioners within the industry and aided in facilitating applications relating to the tools of trade by registered practitioners. However, since 2016, very little has been done to advance inclusive and forward-thinking policies aimed at transforming the entertainment and cultural and creative industries. After consultations with practitioners and observing how other jurisdictions have managed to build a strong entertainment industry, I believe that it is critical that we press forward with developing the designated entertainment zones and establishing new ones across the country. The opposition has always been a strong advocate for greater access and inclusivity in the entertainment industry. We see it as another avenue to building our Jamaican dream. With this in mind, I say that time come to amend the Noise Abatement Act, which allows the entertainment industry to thrive. Colleagues, I also want you to note the potential for downtown Kingston to be a hub for nightlife. And I'm sure that if the mayor was here, he would agree with me enthusiastically. In 2015, UNESCO designated Kingston as a creative music city. Since then, there have been numerous developments, thank you, Senator Crawford, geared towards making downtown an entertainment hub. We need to leverage that momentum and develop other aspects that contribute to the broader entertainment sector. We can't leave out party promoters, DJs, dancers. They all play an important role in our music, entertainment, and culture, but they are oftentimes forgotten. I want to make a recommendation again. See, the council will not come in with solutions. That the government should expand the Artist Ambassador Program to include all persons within the entertainment, cultural, and creative industries. This will serve to create greater linkages between entertainment and tourism and provide international opportunities for industry stakeholders. Increasingly, colleagues, the world is recognizing the value of the orange economy. Not only does the economy benefit tourism, it also reduces unemployment, since stakeholders are able to leverage their natural abilities to provide content and bring in revenue. In today's age of innovation and technological advancement, we have to support the orange economy and realize the true potential. I want to give you an example because I recently found out that a university student, I'm going to call him Daniel, he is majoring in graphics and animation. And Daniel recently had to pass up $1 million opportunity to work remotely for an overseas company because he didn't have the specific device needed to create the content required. When I inquired a little further, I realized that the cost to import the computer was in the hundreds of thousands. And just like that, an opportunity for our economy to benefit was squandered. And I can't help wonder how many more Daniels there are out there, seeking out opportunities for themselves, only to be stifled by a system that does not see the true value of entertainment and creative and cultural industries. The opposition has made several recommendations geared towards addressing some of the pressing issues in the sector. And Mr. President, I want to add to that list. I'm recommending that the government considers tax incentives for people to use Jamaica as a film destination with provisions that guarantee employment for our people. As I wrap up, Mr. President, I want to say that time come to move forward. Time come to move forward. And like Senator Brown stated this morning, time come for us to become a republic. I have no qualms about admitting that I believe that Jamaica should have led the political wave of republicanism in the Caribbean. However, in my view, if Jamaica is truly to become the superpower that it is destined to be, we must take on a process of social re-engineering and decolonization. One will look at our country and see social ills, such as skin bleaching, the sycophantic deference to first world countries. And we cannot forget that much of this is attributed to our colonial history. But I don't want anybody to get me wrong. I'm by no means suggesting that if Jamaica becomes a republic tomorrow, all these issues will come to a halt. What I am suggesting is that becoming a republic is a monumental second step. The transition would be saying that we are ready to stand on our own 2 feet as a country. We are politically independent, that is true. However, we can't stop there. We have to move forward and remove the shackles of oppression by taking this very important second step and moving towards decolonization. Colleagues, we can't pretend anymore that the consequences of slavery are not alive and well in this country. And many of our social ills are as a result, whether we like it or not. And so my last word on this issue is that we must take steps to address the problem. I hear the minister saying that it will come, but many Jamaicans want to know when. Yes. When? Time come for us to remove the monarch as our head of state. And I believe that once we're able to address this issue, we can then move to addressing some other real social problems which this country faces. We can rip out that sense of inferiority and remind our people that we come from long lines of kings and queens. Mr. President, before I take my seat, it would be remiss of me not to speak about the state of crime and violence in the country. Fear, anger, extreme caution on a daily basis is the standard of living acceptable to the Jamaican people? Jamaica ranks second in the world for the highest homicide rates. And I dare say that this is unacceptable. and the time has come for the transformational change that is needed to stem our crime problem. Time come for us to look at the root issues that result in criminality in this country. The existence of gangs within schools and the random yet extreme bouts of violence in classrooms is unnerving. We need to look at the family. We need to address issues of parenting. I spoke a few months back at an event with Minister Terry Long, and I mentioned to him that we need a cadre of social workers to be deployed in our communities. And he agreed. I hope that persons here in this house will also agree that this is a necessary step that we have to take if we are going to re-engineer our society and limit the violent crimes. Mr. President, I also commend the use of mediation services, and I recommend in this House that it is something that is continued as a part of the school curriculum. We need to teach our young people from a tender age how to resolve conflict without using violence. And so I see the work of the Dispute Resolution Foundation, but more needs to be done. Time come for us to take this crime problem serious and get to the root of the problem and fix it from there. Conclusively, Mr. President, I want to say that the state of our nation in respect to so many issues is dire. But as always is the case with this our little island, there is hope. There are policies which, if properly designed and carefully implemented, can lead to serious and positive change in our country. We need to get serious now about improving the state of our country, because time come, and I dare say time is running out for us to make a change. We cannot allow this generation to move forward like this. We have to be pragmatic, and we have to do what is necessary to get them on the right track. Mr. President, none of the issues I touched on today are new to us, but they have been allowed to fester for so long. And as such, it is for all of us in this place, all of us listening, to call out these problems and to give solutions. So at the end of the day, there are no excuses to not act. Because, Mr. President, time come. I thank you for your consideration, and I hope that some of the suggestions that are presented this morning will not fall on deaf ears, but we'll do what is indeed necessary to ensure that the youth of Jamaica see a brighter future and ensure that all Jamaicans feel good to live in the country of their birth. Right. If it pleases you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Morris. Minister, I think that there is a question that ministerial statements be recommitted.
There is, Mr. President. Might it be recommitted?
Yes, you want to just do the suspension and then we do that.
All right. Mr. President, might the debate on the State of the Nation be suspended for a date to be fixed and the agenda item statements by ministers be recommitted?
So that is two questions. First, may the debate, members would have heard the question concerning the suspension of the State of the Nation debate for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against? So ordered. And the second question is that the item statements by ministers be recommitted. Those in favor? Against? Minister?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, if statements can be circulated. Yes, they'll be circulated as is normal. Sorry, no.
Last man.
Merciful. Listen, let's not start. Let's not start on that foot, and it's not necessary. It's not necessary at all. Mr. President, I take this opportunity to inform the Senate of Jamaica's recent participation in the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Mr. President, I recognize that because of the breadth of the agenda and portfolio, I perhaps have not been sharing sufficiently of the work of the ministry by way of ministerial statement. And I felt that in this year of our 60th, I would make a change and try to do a bit more, because indeed the amount of work that is done by this ministry is quite phenomenal in securing the relationships we need. Not sycophantic relationships, but in fact relationships which secure and support our national development goals, including many of the matters which have been addressed today. Mr. President, between the 19th and 24th of September, I attended the UNGA, which was held at the headquarters in New York, also supporting the Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, during his participation as head of delegation. As the body which most concretely expresses the concept of multilateralism and indeed its practice, Jamaica views its annual participation in the meetings of the General Assembly as an imperative in the conduct of its foreign policy. It is in this forum that we are able to advance positions on current and critical issues of national and global relevance through our policy statement, through which we engage in discussions at the bilateral and regional levels and carry out special initiatives in the promotion of economic trade and investment objectives. For Jamaica, this 77th session carried particular significance as, like the rest of the world, we are emerging from the pandemic of over 2 years, only to be thrust into this stranglehold of the food and energy crises spawned by the war in Ukraine. The ever-present reality of a climate crisis, or vulnerabilities as a small island developing state, and the social and economic challenges faced at home found common cause with other members of the international community with whom Jamaica continues to collaborate at the UN in search of viable solutions. On a positive note, our participation this year was especially meaningful in light of the commemoration of Jamaica's 60th year, not only as an independent nation, but also as a member of the United Nations, to which we were admitted on the 18th of September, 1962. Mr. President, at the start of the 77th session, Ambassador Csaba Korosi of Hungary was elected president of the GA, with Jamaica serving as one of 21 vice presidents and indeed one of the 3 representatives of the Latin American and Caribbean region. In this context, it was therefore my distinct honor to preside over a segment of the proceedings of the GA on Tuesday, the 20th of September, during which some particularly powerful presentations were heard and received by the General Assembly. I know that some persons here in Jamaica were watching closely and found them very interesting. Mr. President, the policy statements made in the general debate were delivered under the theme, A Watershed Moment, Transformative Solutions to Interlocking Challenges. And in so doing, Member States recognized the complex nature and interconnectedness of current global challenges, including the ongoing energy and food crises, climate change, and the ongoing war in Europe. It was widely acknowledged that all of these challenges require unity and cooperation in the search for innovative and transformative solutions. In respect of Jamaica's national policy statement, the Prime Minister delivered on the 22nd of September. During his statement, he outlined the unprecedented overlapping crises, the ongoing impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, inflation, debt, energy and food insecurity, and natural disasters fueled by climate change. He also called for acknowledgement of the differentiated needs and vulnerability of all UN members, with specific mention of small island developing states and middle-income countries, which are particularly vulnerable to climate shocks and external economic shocks. Prime Minister Holness championed the need for the availability and access to development finance, a matter on which Jamaica has been a strong advocate for years. In fact, early in our tenure in office, we started to call for the international financial architecture to be aligned with the SDGs if the world was to attain its agreed targets. I recall having my first meeting with the DSG, Amina Mohammed, on this issue, 2016-2017, when it sounded quite revolutionary. But it is a matter which has gained traction together with related policy proposals developed during our co-chairmanship of the Financing for Development in the Era of COVID and Beyond initiative, which we started in 2020. It has since been incorporated into the UN Secretary General's common agenda, which has mainstreamed within the multilateral system consideration of this and other policy initiatives arising therefrom, deemed supportive of global recovery and indeed global development. On a related matter, Prime Minister Holness also reiterated support for the work of the high-level panel developing the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, the MVI. And in the area of security of great national importance and on an issue of increasing concern to countries in CARICOM, the Prime Minister also called for a war on guns as he sought to bring attention to the need for source countries to curb the supply of arms and ammunition. Also of note was Jamaica's proposal of the official designation of February 17 annually as Global Tourism Resilience Day. In that regard, the Prime Minister encouraged the global community to work with us towards commemorating the first Global Tourism Resilience Day in 2023. It's intended that this annual commemoration will serve to encourage a consistent examination of resilience building in the tourism sector in the face of persistent global disruptions to sustainable tourism and sustainable development. The formal adoption of this initiative by the General Assembly will be pursued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade through our permanent mission in New York, and its actions, of course, are supported by the Ministry of Tourism, ably led by Minister Ed Bartlett, who has, of course, been raising the issue of resilience globally, and it has found great favour and partnership on all continents of the world at this time. Mr. President, in furtherance of Jamaica's interest in ocean affairs and at the invitation of the Prime Ministers of Norway and Palau as co-chairs of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, the Prime Minister, who is a founding member, participated in the Ocean Panel's leaders' meeting. In his address, Prime Minister Holness spoke to the deleterious impact of invasive species that threaten our food security and tourism product, and also called for the promoting and protection of our oceans while harnessing its capacity in sustainable ways. Mr. President, the UN is the mecca for the pursuit of bilateral contacts. Although it is a multilateral heart of multilateralism, it is the mecca for bilateral contacts, particularly during high-level week, which sees the participation of leaders from every region of the world. I believe they had 120 heads of state and heads of government there this year. Jamaica used the opportunity to conduct several bilateral meetings. Prime Minister Holness held fruitful bilateral talks with the newly elected President of Kenya, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, and the President of Slovenia, His Excellency Mr. Borut Pahor. These exchanges have served to strengthen Jamaica's relations with both countries, one large, one small, one in Africa, one in Europe, again, both holding great opportunities for mutual benefit. At the level of foreign ministers, I met with colleagues from Costa Rica, Greece, Latvia, Luxembourg, Morocco, Portugal, and Ukraine, with whom I shared perspectives on challenges affecting small states, pandemic recovery, the graduation of middle-income countries, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and indeed the combined food, energy, and inflation crises. We explored avenues through which we could strengthen bilateral and multilateral cooperation. And of course, indeed, in respect of Minister Kuleba of Ukraine, I expressed appreciation for the support given to safe passage of our students at the time of the invasion in February, and sought his support in addressing some matters which still subsist that the ministry has been, in respect of which the ministry has been supporting them. Mr. President, two additional highlights of our participation in High Level Week were the formal establishment by Jamaica of diplomatic relations with the Republic of Liberia and the Republic of the Marshall Islands. Mr. President, I must share informally that when it is that His Excellency George Weah was elected in 2017, and we celebrated the fact that the First Lady of Liberia was in fact Jamaican, and we sought to send formal messages of congratulations and solidarity, I then realized that we did not have diplomatic relations with the Republic of Liberia, and immediately set about obtaining, doing the technical work and obtaining Cabinet's approval for us to engage in the same. And I must say the collaboration on both sides is grounded in extremely positive sentiments and are off to a good start, Mr. President. We look forward to engaging. Signed the joint communiques with the Foreign Minister of Liberia, His Excellency D. Maxwell Sir Kemaya, Sr., who is also the Dean of the Cabinet, and also with Her Excellency Kiplang Kabua of the Marshall Islands. Jamaica looks forward to mutually beneficial relations with both these countries, extremely different, but with whom we share many values and developmental challenges, and therefore we look to reaping the mutual benefits of increased formal relations with these countries. I'm proud that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade now manages formal diplomatic relations with 174 nations, having through concerted efforts increased this number by 9 since having taken office in 2016. Mr. President, I was also happy to meet with the Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honourable Sylveria Jacobs, with whom I held discussions on the Sustainable Development Goals, issues affecting SIDS and women in leadership as a follow-up to another meeting we held earlier this year. She's indeed the first woman to hold the role of Prime Minister of St. Martin, and therefore one to be celebrated again as women increase our numbers in global leadership. Mr. President, in order to ensure maximum coverage of issues and partnerships, I also participated in the following meetings on the margins of High Level Week. The opening of the Transforming Education Summit, which was attended and supported by the Honourable Favour Williams, Minister of Education and Youth, and Dr. Kassan Troop, who attended with her. CELAC ACS Foreign Ministers meeting. As we recall, the CELAC is the 30 countries of the Americas. You take 30 of the OAS excluding Canada and the US, so take all the Latin American and Caribbean, and the ACS is all those countries within the Caribbean Sea, including the Dutch and French Antilles, so Hispanophone and other countries are included within the ACS. Foreign ministers met jointly under the chairmanship of Argentina and Guatemala, and in our meetings, Jamaica supported the strengthening of these cooperative mechanisms working together to provide another forum in which to address issues of concern to the region. I attended a high-level dialogue on preventing violence against children hosted by the Foreign Minister of Luxembourg, Jean Asselborn, and the discussion explored approaches to ending violence. It was moderated by a special representative of the UN Secretary General on this issue, Dr. Najat Mjid, who will be visiting Jamaica next month. And so we started also discussions in the margins to see how it is that we work better together in terms of our pursuit of the global partnership to end violence against children, which we launched here in 2019. Foreign ministers of Colombia, Cape Verde, Iceland and Morocco also participated, in addition to senior representatives from Costa Rica and the Philippines. And I must say, you would think it not obvious because of the differences in our countries, but certainly our discussions between myself and the minister responsible for education and social services of Iceland had some phenomenally innovative approaches to the funding of social services and the funding of programs to end violence against children, and those discussions will therefore be built therefrom, the connections now having been made. Mr. President, the 15th Ministerial meeting of the Global Governance Group was also an important meeting hosted by the Foreign Minister of Singapore. And the 3Gs, as they're called, at the Global Governance Group, provides a conduit through which small and medium-sized countries channel advocacy on issues of concern to the G20 in particular, which is, of course, made up of the world's largest economies. The G20 accounts for 90% of global GNP, 80% of global trade, and 2/3 of the world's population. So during this engagement with the G20 Troika, Italy, India, Italy outgoing, Indonesia current, and India incoming, I highlighted on behalf of small island developing states the need for greater and better climate and development financing, and of course the closing of the digital divide, which is particularly important because in many countries the world is moving on to discuss transforming the digital economies. But many developing countries are still at the stage of having a serious divide and internal domestic inequalities. So the risk is now emerging from COVID that countries, having recognized how deep their domestic and the international digital divides are, have to hold firm to a discourse, a global discourse that ensures that not only no country is left behind, but no person is left behind. And this is therefore very critical to have these discussions in the right spaces, so that they can be where the decisions are being made on global resourcing, that they can be considered. Mr. President, the third annual meeting of the Group of Friends of Universal Health Coverage and Global Health, I also attended on behalf of Jamaica, sharing our thoughts and actions in respect of primary health care and coverage, and our plans underway, which are well aligned with the global guidance to build health resilience across the world. I also reiterated our call for the reform of the international financial architecture to create for highly indebted middle-income countries and SIDS the fiscal space to address issues of debt repayment and to channel well-needed investments into healthcare. I made the point in more than one context, Mr. President, that it is absolutely critical that while we're having these sector-specific discussions, we recognize that that fiscal space is a real issue for many small developing countries, and that having one discussion without the other will leave us with our fundamental issues unsolved. Sure. Without fiscal space, you cannot make the investments that are necessary unless the global financial architecture is adjusted in a way that will allow us to so do. Mr. President, the 46th Ministerial meeting of the G77, which was chaired by the Foreign Minister of Pakistan and attended by the Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly, was also attended by me on behalf of Jamaica. I congratulated the Republic of Cuba on their election to assume the chair in 2023, and again repeated our call regarding international financial institutions to support highly indebted developing countries to access debt relief, concessional financing and grants. Jamaica is a founding member of the G77 and remains committed to enhancing South-South cooperation. Mr. President, the special meeting of the CARICOM Foreign Ministers Council, COFCOR, also took place on the 22nd, and it addressed current and developing global issues, including the situation in Haiti and the situation in Ukraine. I presented on issues related to financing for development, which Jamaica leads within the UN system. Mr. President, the CARICOM India Foreign Ministers meeting, which took place on the 23rd, was convened by India, during which we celebrated also its 75 years of active cooperation at the UN. The issues discussed included steps to enhance South-South cooperation and indeed direct cooperation between the Republic of India and Jamaica, and the region. I spoke to some of the cooperation projects which exist in Jamaica in the areas of technology, health and development, which are also being supported in several other countries, in addition to discussions on climate change and food security. As we would know, Jamaica is a participant in the International Solar Alliance, which is led by India and France, and we also are participating and supporting their coalition for resilient construction, as well as the initiative for resilient island states, IRIS. Mr. President, these are just a few of the mechanisms through which the government of India supports developing countries. Mr. President, the COVID-19 Global Action Plan Ministerial was co-hosted by the USA, Spain, Botswana, and Bangladesh by their foreign ministers, and Jamaica was the sole small island developing state invited to once again participate. Our last meeting was virtual. This indeed was our second. Foreign ministers were invited to discuss how it is we exit together in a more even way the acute phase of the COVID-19 pandemic and to better prepare for future pandemics. As the only representative of a small island developing state, I posited that not only do we have to ensure that the world has effective mechanisms to facilitate affordable vaccines by all, because this is a significant part of the preparatory mechanism, but that resilience against future health crises depends on flexible development financing that will allow for highly indebted low and middle income countries to build up effective healthcare systems. And again, I must say that it is really a great honor when one recognizes that Jamaica is held in such regard that we are invited as a small island developing state to carry the voice of small island issues into broader discussions. Mr. President, I'm also pleased, and this is, I think, the last meeting that I will mention, although there were a few more, that I was also honored to meet with the UN Secretary General, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, with whom I assured of Jamaica's strong commitment to the UN and the multilateral system. We had good discussions on the important issues of climate action, financing for development, SDGs, SIDS, and youth empowerment, and it was in fact a good opportunity to congratulate the SG on the establishment of the new youth office within the Office of the Secretary General, and we expressed appreciation to the former PGA, the Foreign Minister of the Maldives, who recently visited Jamaica and who marshalled this process through the General Assembly under his tenure. Mr. President, the very active participation of Jamaica during this year's high-level week reflects the depth and the extent of matters of concern to our nation, which need to be brought to international attention, together with our perspectives on global matters which impact our national development goals. Building relationships that work to advance our development priorities is a major objective of the Foreign Ministry. It is a continuous process which supports the application of foreign policy in this very unpredictable global environment. Mr. President, continued engagement of the delegation over the coming months will continue the work of the General Assembly, and I take this opportunity to publicly thank our dedicated teams here in Kingston and at the Permanent Mission in New York, who keep the Jamaica flag flying high. Over the past 60 years, we have accomplished much on the international stage, and our efforts remain directed towards maintaining this trajectory of high performance and impact. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minister. And on the conclusion of any comment, you would take the other statement. Is that it? Oh, you took the other? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, Senator Fraser-Binns. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Senator Fraser-Binns.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I just have one question for the Foreign Affairs Minister, and it's on page 5, the Ocean Panel Leaders Meeting. I wondered whether the issue of deep sea men, I know it would have been discussed last month here, but I wonder whether that issue came up.
No, I'm not aware that it was discussed at that particular meeting.
Thank you very much. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President. No, the State of the Nation is coming. It will come. Mr. President, Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today. I would simply recognize the beautiful delivery of her opening State of the Nation remarks by Senator Morris. I know that when we start to share some of the facts, she will realize how much many of her concerns are already being addressed by the government. But we hear the voice of young people, which is also constrained and also has deep distress globally coming out of the pandemic in
Minister,
particular.
thank you very much.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. President. Mr. President, but I would ask that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Yes, just before I do that, may I join you, Minister, in congratulating the Senator Morris on her presentation. Senator Gale, please join and congratulating Senator Morris on your presentation. And Minister, may I also say that the presentation today certainly emphasizes the tremendous role that yourself, the Minister of State, Mr. Campbell, and all the staff at the ministry at various levels, ambassadorial levels and all levels there. It certainly indicates the level of work that you do. And I think that, as you pointed out, you should keep the Senate and the country up to date with the tremendous job that you are doing, to use your phrase, keeping Jamaica's flag flying high on the international, in the international space. The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against? And thank you, Mr. Sinclair, for doing very well. We're going I'm going to have to review the tape and see exactly where you went wrong, so I can advise you for future. This Senate now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Can